Now, back here in the U.S., it's no surprise that being bullied is destructive, but a new study reveals the depth of the destruction. Childhood bullying can cause far-reaching effects well into adulthood. In the memoir PACE, Dr. Frank Spinelli recounts years of childhood sexual abuse and bullying. He is an associate clinical professor of medicine at New York Medical College and a fellow of the American College of Physicians. Welcome to Arise America. Thanks for being here, Dr. Spinelli.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I don't think anybody is surprised that bullying can be harmful, particularly to our children. I think what's surprising about this study is how far those effects can reach into later life. Did that surprise you?
Absolutely. No, it hasn't surprised me at all. I'm waiting for studies like this to come up more and more. But we did learn that looking at 4,000 children over 5 years, that this is a progressive, cumulative effect well into adulthood. But what the study did point out is if there was early intervention early on, you could prevent this downward spiral, and I think that's what's so promising.
Okay, so we want to get to that in just a second, but let's go back and talk about these effects. First of all, how does this manifest itself, these long-term effects to cumulative bullying?
Right, well, so think about it. A child goes to school every day, spends a significant amount of time. He's being bullied or she's being bullied. That leads to isolation, depression, anxiety. The child will not participate in school, so it really becomes more isolated, goes home, doesn't want to play with any children. This over time will develop an adult who is depressed, anxious, but also more prone to smoking, which was pointed out in the second study, and also more likely to become sick and take a longer time to get well. So a significant effect on the adult who's been bullied as a child.
Is there a connection between the age through which bullying happens and how bad the effects are later? In other words, if a child is bullied, let's say, from 7 to 10, but then no more bullying, is that child at risk of the same type of effects if that child is bullied into their teenage?
Well, it's interesting because what you're really looking at is how long they were bullied and if bullying was past, present, or both, and really show that if they were being bullied, let's say from grammar school well into high school, that they had significant effects as an adult. So really it's the duration of bullying and not necessarily how many years, if it was happening as a grammar school student or even as a high school student, but the cumulative effect over time.
Was there any difference in the type of bullying that was taking place?
Well, you know, it's interesting you brought that up because girls will most likely bully girls and boys will stick with boys, but boys are more targeted. They will often enact violence with the one boy that they're bullying. Girls employ other girls and form cliques, and they'll spread rumors and gossip, but they're more likely to use cyberbullying. So posting things on Facebook or MySpace, so terrorizing other girls. And we have to remember that we're not only worried about the long-term effects, but children commit suicide at a higher rate because of bullying happening to them right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous. Let's talk about the intervention. How quickly does the intervention need to happen to stop that cycle, if you will?
This is so important because one, a child is not going to tell a parent or a teacher they're being bullied. It's few and far between that they will ever come forward. So it's very, very important for parents to look for changes in their personality. So it's important for parents to say, how was your day at school? What happened at recess? If your child is coming home and doesn't want to play with other children, or he's going up to his room and he's just isolating himself, it's very important to ask them why. Then once you've identified that bullying is happening, immediately tell the school, tell the teachers, and get that child help. I only wish that my parents had gotten me early psychological intervention. I got it as an adult. Best investment I ever made in my life. But you could spare your child years of shame and depression if you only got early intervention.
And speaking of that early intervention, Dr. Spinelli, beside the parents being these great detectives and discerning what's going on, should every child that's bullied get professional help to work through those issues?
Yes, absolutely, because the child will think that it's their fault and they'll blame themselves. And so what happens is over time they think they're not worthy, they have low self-esteem. So it's very important to reverse that early on so that they can really become active participants in their education and in social activities and be better adults.
I'm wondering, did you find, because I know you had a history of bullying and you talk about your own experience in your book, did you discover later when you did get help that there were certain facets of your behavior, patterns that you were doing that turned out to be connected to bullying, but you didn't know?
Oh, absolutely. I could see myself withdrawing from school. I did poorly in school. And I think if I had only really recognized that this was a direct result of being bullied, that could have spared me all those years where I probably wasn't doing up to my full capacity. And that's why it's so important for that early intervention to give that child a chance, especially when you want them to go on and go to college and have really active careers, because we do know that children that are bullied don't do well in school, they don't have really good incomes later on, and they're more likely to have poor interactions with their family members.
You know, another key component in this, I really do believe, beside parental involvement and professional help, is the activity of the peers, the child's peers. Because peer pressure is a huge influence in a child's life.
And
what do we do
it shapes them.
with our kids to convince them to either stop bullies when they see it happening or report it?
Absolutely. I think you don't have to be the victim. You can also just be another child who points this out. And so it's important you teach your child that if you are being bullied, you should come forward. But also, if you see your friends being bullied, tell your parents as well. That parent can then go to the victim's parent. It's important that we really focus on this being a group effort to protect the child and also to protect the bullies, because we know that no one wins in the end. Bullies grow up to be aggressive people, and they take out that aggression on their parents and their spouse and also their children.
Yeah, there's an old saying about that, hurt people, hurt people. Yeah,
Exactly.
Dr. Frank Spinelli, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.